challenges that once tried to break you became the very reason you learned to rise. Well, my next guest, growing up with hydrocephalus, meant endless surgery, setbacks, and recovery, but it also sparked something powerful. The unshakable belief that resilience can turn even the hardest stories into extraordinary ones. Her journey from patient to psychologist isn't just inspiring, it's proof that strength isn't found in what we endure, but in how we grow beyond it. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and let's learn more about her. See you there, everybody.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping up.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I have Dr. Kate on the show. Welcome to the show, Dr. Kate.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So why don't we start off with, I usually like to ask my guests, tell me a little bit about yourself and then we'll get going.
Okay, sure. So let's see. I am a clinical psychologist. I've been a psychologist for about 22 years. I am a mom. I have 18-year-old twin boys. I can't believe they're 18, but they are. Um, hmm. I live in Seattle. I've been married for 28 years, and I have two awesome dogs. Um, I'm a dog person, and one of my favorite things that I do right now actually is my dog Wally and I volunteer out at Seattle Children's Hospital, and we visit the patients and the
Mhm.
families, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. And when Wally came along, he's almost 4. He seemed like he had an amazing temperament for this type of thing, and so we started working and trained, and here we are. So that's something that I love to do. And I'll also throw in that I'm an author. I have a book coming out as we speak, as a matter of fact.
From one soon to be author to another, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that's exciting. You're gonna have a book coming out too?
Yeah, I wrote a book. It's unique to the community of autism and everyone else. It's so different because where most books relate to the younger generation or give advice or for clinicians, my book is all about my lived experience with autism, with humor thrown in,
Mhm.
but with a very vital message, which most everyone can relate to, which is you need to step out of your comfort zone
Yes. Oh my goodness,
because
that's
that's
so
where
great.
that's where your story starts. That's where the world and the adventure comes from.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I love the human experience that you're talking about, because
Yeah.
isn't that like what it's all about? The human experience?
hmm Now,
Yeah.
first, let me say I'm really excited to have you here. You spent over 2 decades studying and living resilience, both as a psychologist and a parent. That's a pretty big word, resilience. So let's start there. What pulled you into this world in the first place?
Sure, got it. Yeah. So, I believe that my passion for resilience and my focus in this area really started way back when I was 4. I was diagnosed with this medical condition called hydrocephalus, which is where the cerebral spinal fluid doesn't circulate as it should, causing pressure to build up on the brain. And so, the good news is, well, that's the bad news. The good news is, hydrocephalus can be managed with something called a shunt, but the bad news is that's a surgical procedure, and as happens, shunts break, and you have to.
Mm.
So my childhood was pretty much in and out of the hospital, getting these shunt revisions and dealing with that. And it's a piece of who I am. It's not all of who I am, but I think that those early experiences and experiences that really went on for a very long time really fostered my interest in how do you bounce back from hard moments? How do you, figure out how to focus on what you can do as opposed to just the things you can't do? And so that was a big piece of my early lived experience, and really I think has informed, my direction as a psychologist and all of these things. So I guess that's the answer to that question. Yeah.
Now, the word resilience gets thrown around a lot, but sometimes it feels like a buzzword to some people. When you talk about resilience, especially in this messy real life sense, what does it actually mean to you?
Yeah, that's such a great question as well because it can be a buzzword for sure. And so I'm looking at resilience not just as bouncing back from like a singular challenge that pops up during the day or something like that. It's more of an internalized, lived experience. Like you're
Hmm.
building, we want to help folks build a resilient mindset, a resilient lifestyle by integrating sort of strategies and tools that work for them into their day to day so that it just becomes their baseline. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Because a lot of times, yeah, people talk about resilience like in relation to coming back from a challenge that pops up or what have you. And so this is more of an integrated lifestyle slash mindset that I'm talking about.
Well, let me ask you something. Do you think that everybody is hardwired with resiliency, or is it something that can be built and earned and just worked on to the point where they become resilient? So when they do bounce back from something, they're more resilient to any changes that come at them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think that we're all born with a certain level, sort of an internalized kind of resilience that's there at the get-go. But resilience can definitely be fostered and built along the way by integrating tools and strategies into our lives, doing things that are going to foster our overall sense of well-being. Um, because the more we are focused on optimizing our overall sense of
Mhm.
well-being, ultimately the more resilient we're going to become.
Now, when we talk about resilience, I mean, a lot of people see it as I need to work on this because I have upcoming challenges coming at me. What are some of the things people can do to build their resilience? So if a challenge comes up in their life, it's not going to knock them down. They can just work on what they're doing and get through that challenge without being overexerted or burnt out.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And so that's sort of at the core of what I teach people. It's this technique that helps them do just that. So we want folks to start from a level place. We want folks to
Mhm.
have their stress response, their sort of emotional foundation level at the
Mm,
beginning of each day, ideally all the time, right? Because we don't want folks starting the day in an escalated place such that when a challenge hits, they're going to shut down because of that challenge, right? So we want to help them maintain this level playing field, so to speak. And so we can do that in lots of different ways, but my favorite thing to teach people, and I work with everybody on this, is to integrate this technique called the relaxation response. And this was a very simple kind of meditative breathing technique developed by a physician in Boston years ago, and really powerful. And what you do is you think of a word or a phrase that you find soothing in some way, and you just breathe.
mm,
You might slow it down a little bit, but you just breathe. And practicing that consistently, we have people practice 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes later in the day to kind of bookend the day so that they start to integrate what it feels like to be in that more level space.
mm,
And it's not like a we're pushing this button and you're all of a sudden going to feel different or level. You have to kind of practice and integrate what this feels like over time. And so that's a really powerful, really simple strategy that I teach everybody that I work with, and it really is helpful, very much backed by research, empirical studies, and such. So that's my go-to on that to keep us
That's
level.
so That's so funny that you mentioned that you get everyone down to that level because I've heard so many times people when they start up in life, when they're dealing with things, they're at this, and you need to get them down
Mhm.
to a comparable level to deal with things because if you're at this, like you said, if you're at this level, your senses are heightened, everything is at almost at the fight and flight mode, and you need to bring them down to be able to escalate and deal with things. Otherwise, they're causing their own issues.
Exactly, right. And so, you know, definitely we're not, kind of making intensifying the issues that they're facing. Absolutely. And so really important that yeah, we can, through practice, through kind of techniques like the relaxation response can really work to modulate our stress response because that's such a vital point. Like we never want to be starting up here
No.
because we're going to face challenges, right? We're all going to face challenges every single day. And so to have something that can level us out, bring us down is vital. It's really the most important thing.
I mean, you're so right because what people don't realize is your life is full of challenges.
Oh
You
yeah.
don't want to tackle them up here on the high
Yep.
because you're just going to cause yourself more problems. You want to be able to handle them on the lower because then you can see the situation, you can visualize it, and you can say, okay, now you can think about how you're going to deal with it, how you're going to get through it, and how you're going to walk away feeling much more resilient than you were before.
Exactly. That's such a good point, right? By coming down to this more stress modulated level space, you're giving yourself perspective, to be able to deal with the challenge in a fuller way, a more and with a clearer mind, a clearer head.
And now let's talk a little bit about your podcast. I mean, from one podcaster to another, I mean, it's a great world when you get to talk with so many different individuals from different walks of life. You've talked to Navy SEALs, athletes, everybody in a total different background. I am curious though, is there a common thread you've noticed in how they bounce back from setbacks?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And yeah, the podcasting is so cool. It's such a cool experience to be able to connect with so many different people and hear so many different stories. And you know, the common thread is that I think I can kind of bring forth in terms of how folks have built things, bounced back from
Hmm.
setbacks, is really an awareness of what it is they need to move forward and to be at their best, right?
Hmm.
Because there's really no one size fits all in
No.
terms of how we're going to move through and beyond challenge, how we're going to enable ourselves to see the possibilities on the other side of challenge. So I think it's that awareness piece, whether they're someone's building something or bouncing back from challenge or trying to optimize a business or writing a book or um, caring for a child with a significant challenge. It's that awareness of what they need to be at their best within that given situation that matches their context.
Now, was there ever a guest star who that really stuck with you, maybe even surprised you or shifted the way you think about resilience yourself?
I'm there's so many stories, right, that
Hmm.
have been powerful and that because we're moving in on 160 episodes. Um but some of the stories that really have stuck with me are from parents, when I'm interviewing parents who have maybe written a book about caring for a child with significant medical illness or physical disability, something along those lines, and just the human connection, the human spirit that comes forth in those moments has really stuck with me because my whole idea with the podcast is really to access the human experience of resilience and what that means for each person as they're coming through. But I think because of my own personal experiences with medical stuff early as a kid, as well as my training in medical psychology in so many different hospitals working with kids and families, I think that those stories are, for me, the most powerful.
That's one of the things I love about your podcast is you're showing that the response is not a cookie cutter response. Everyone deals differently with setbacks. Everyone has their own way of managing it. Everyone has their own way of being resilient about it and dealing with the problem when it hits them. And you're showing everybody from on your show that, hey, each person is different. Each person has their own set of values, their own sets of way of dealing with these. It's not a like I said, it's not a cookie cutter response. We all are wired differently.
Exactly. Yes, we're all wired differently and we're all coming from different contexts. And so we all need different things to thrive within those contexts, right? And our experiences are different, and the way we define ourselves are different. And yeah, it's just so interesting to hear all of the different perspectives and angles and stories as they relate to resilience and just the human experience.
And something I really love about your approach is you don't just focus on the highlight reel. You get into falling apart moments. Why are these moments just as important as the big wins?
Yeah, well, because, life is not about the big wins, right? I mean, the big wins are nice, but it's really about those smaller moments, you know, the good and the challenging
Mhm.
that kind of come together to culminate in those big wins, right? So I think it's important to um, have the full picture in mind, right? To have um, the full experience because that makes it all the more authentic.
Now, I want to bring it back to you for a minute. You've studied this, you've taught it, but I'm sure you've also had times where resilience wasn't just a theory, it was something you had to live. Can you share a moment like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of them through my life, right? Um,
Hmm.
but I think the most kind of poignant ones are, well, back when I was younger and managing, through the numerous multiple surgeries as a kid and coming back to school looking different, feeling different. Oftentimes my head was half shaved. It was just, it was not awesome, particularly in early adolescence. Kids are not necessarily that kind, right? And so, those were challenging times. And to figure out how to, and I had a lot of support in this as well with my family and the parents of my friends and that sort of thing. But, how to move forward despite the challenges, how to focus on what I could do as opposed to what I couldn't do, right? And how that was really powerful for me in moving forward. Then other things, would pop up like um, I was a tennis player. I played tennis because I was not able to do contact sports. So I did tennis and I was pretty good at it, but I never won. I wasn't the winner, right? I was usually second place or something like that. But, was playing because I actually loved it, internalized from the inside out. And I think that's a big piece of resilience because if you really have a passion, you love what you're doing, it's easier to move through the difficult moments. Um, so I guess those are some moments. And then, shoot, I mean, I have 18-year-old twin boys, I was, um, my husband was traveling most of the time when they were infants from like 0 to 3. He was traveling for work, and so there were a lot of moments where I had to be resilient then, um, to be navigating the needs of two babies on my own in the middle of the night if they weren't sleeping or whatever. And so lots of moments like that, and those kinds of moments in parenting have, of course, continued along the way. So yeah, a long answer to your question. Tons of moments where I've had to be resilient, and it's not just a theory, it's had to
Hmm.
be put into practice.
Now, as both a psychologist and a parent, do you notice resilience showing up in kids versus adults, or are there patterns that kind of run across the board?
Well, so you mean does resilience show up differently in kids than it does in adults?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it can, right? Because, sometimes kids depending on their age, aren't able to articulate in the same way, obviously, as an adult is. Um, so it's again though individual. I don't think we can specifically say, adults are resilient in this way and kids are resilient in that way. But I think it really depends on the individual. Um, but there is a piece about kind of developmental, kind of where one is on the developmental spectrum, which allows them to live resilience more fully, perhaps.
Mhm.
But kids are certainly, they can be incredibly resilient, bouncing back from challenges and traumas, very, very, very readily and very well.
So let's talk about the person listening right now who feels like they just barely hanging on. What's the first small step they can take to start building real resilience?
Well, the first thing I would say is that managing that stress response is the most vital thing, right? So, practicing something like the relaxation response every day for 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes later in the day, really, really important to just start modulating that stress response so that they're not starting up here when a challenge hits. So that's the most important thing. And then, you know, taking a bit of a step back and thinking, what do I need to be at my best? And that I think is a really important question for all of us to be asking. So, managing the stress response and then asking yourself, what are some of the things that I need to be at my best? And it's going to look different for all of us. And then starting to integrate slowly those things over time.
And we hear the word burnout constantly these days. How do you see resilience playing into burnout? And what are some of the ways people can actually start to climb out of it when they feel completely drained?
Yeah, that's such a good point because burnout is real, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we
I
can
mean,
be moving so fast and trying to
mhm.
get so many things done and having so many um pies in the air, so to speak, and it just it can burn us out. It can lead to places where we're just, we feel like we're running really fast against a wall or we're walking backwards through mud. And it's important for us to recognize those moments, to be able to recognize those moments and say, wait, I think I'm burning out, or maybe I've already burned out. And being able to take that step back and ask once again, what do I need to shift out of this place? What is going to be important for me?
Mhm.
And then integrating a practice like the relaxation response, because again, it all comes down to managing our emotional state.
Yeah.
So we can tolerate challenge and frustration. And then I would say support, is important. Calling a friend, reaching out to somebody in your community. Just it doesn't even have to be about the burnout or the struggle, but just for a moment of human connection. That can be very powerful as well. Um, and then fresh air, a
Oh
little bit
yeah.
of movement, really powerful in helping us shift into a more positive, less burned out state. Um, but again, awareness and that modulation of stress
Mhm.
response.
I mean, people don't realize that fresh air is so vital to well-being in general because I mean it's like the old adage is step away when you're frustrated with something, step away from it, get some fresh air and come back with a new set of eyes.
Exactly.
Because it's that fresh air that really invigorates your body and get your mind stimulated all over again because you're tired. That fresh air shocks your system and it's like, oh, it's like a second wind.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And yes, and there's a lot of research out there. We know that fresh air, physical movement are very powerful antidotes to, when we're kind of feeling overwhelmed, stressed, burned out, that sort of thing. So very powerful if you can, just get outside for a walk around the block. That can be very, very
Mhm.
powerful.
Now, are there little daily habits or even mindset shifts that can make a real difference over time?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And so one thing that I really love is this thing called the daily wins exercise. And, oftentimes when we're feeling bogged down, overwhelmed, burned out, it's hard to pick out the things that did go well on a given day or in a given situation, and really just we find ourselves focusing on the things that didn't go well, or the negatives, or the would haves, could have, should haves. And so if we sit down at the end of each day and intentionally write down 3 to 5 things that did go well, we are really going to be doing we're going to be giving ourselves that potential to move at least to a neutral point, but hopefully into the positive zone, right? And that will really help with that overarching feeling of overwhelm, burnout, etc. So that's one habit that I would absolutely recommend.
Now, on the flip side, what do you think people often get wrong when they try to be resilient? Because I imagine sometimes people force it in a way that backfires.
Yeah, yeah, and that's like a really good point. And so the thing is really taking that step back with a sense of awareness, understanding yourself and what is it that's going to help you to flourish within your context, whatever that looks like for you, right? So
Hmm.
the mistake that people make is, seeing an ad on TV and, oh, this supplement is going to make me more resilient, or, oh, my friend is doing this, maybe I should do that. But yet that thing that their friend is doing might not be the right thing for them,
Yeah.
and might not be the right fit for them, and then it doesn't work. So then that adds to the discouragement and that feeling of overwhelm and all of that. So really taking that step back to figure out, okay, what is it that I need to be at my best, is a really, really important first step.
I mean, that's so important. And you hit the nail on the head when you said people look at what others are doing and they think that's best for them. I mean, that's almost the American mindset of when people want to get better, they look at others and it's like, oh, they said this, they're doing that, they're doing well, look at them. Maybe I should do that. And then they try it and it backfires and then they feel discouraged and then it's that ever-ending loop. And my feeling is people don't look deeper in themselves and say, okay, I'm feeling this way. What do I need to build that resilience within inside myself? Or how can I make myself healthier? I can't look at them, because their body, their metabolism is different than my own. What can I do within myself with that I have at my disposal? They don't bother saying, hey, maybe I should ask my doctor. What do they recommend? Because they're the ones that know me, my health history and everything else and what will work for me.
Exactly. Yes, that is such a good point. Asking those, particularly your doctor who know you the best, is excellent. And not doing things that mm, might work just because my neighbor is doing it,
Yeah.
really important to personalize the context.
I mean, I feel a lot of people are afraid to ask their doctor, and get me if I'm wrong, because they're afraid that the doctor will find an underlying problem with them and say, you have this too. I just looked at your history and now we gotta deal with this, and that means, oh, I gotta deal with this condition now that my doctor found.
Hmm, possible. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Maybe, it definitely sometimes can be hard for folks to connect with their doctors, but really important to connect with their doctors. But
Yeah,
yeah, I hear what you're saying, not wanting to uncover something that they don't want to know about. I get that too, but it's important to keep that open line of
yeah.
communication and connection with with somebody in on the medical professional side who knows you well.
I also feeling the other issue is there are people who haven't gone to a doctor and think, oh, I'm in the best shape of my life. Why should I see a doctor?
Mm.
I know my body best, but yet you're not doing the right things until you find out something from your own, until you talk to a doctor and that doctor investigates you.
Yeah, that connection is definitely important. Yeah, because it really speaks to the idea of overall well-being.
Yeah.
And that kind of ongoing connection with your medical professional is definitely a big piece of fostering your overall sense of well-being. Definitely.
Yeah. Now, I want to swing back to your podcast, the Optimize Mind. What's the bigger picture for you? Where do you hope these conversations will lead your listeners?
Yeah, so I hope that my hope is that our listeners will leave each episode with a greater sense of possibility. What's possible for them, either on the other side of a challenge that they're facing, or in terms of what they're creating or hoping to develop, that sort of thing. And I'm hoping that they take away from each episode um, kind of an element of the human experience,
Mhm.
of what it means to build, move through and beyond challenge, that kind of thing. So I'm hoping they take something away and have a greater sense of possibility after each episode.
Now, if you had to leave people with just one guiding principle, like resilience compass they can carry with them, what would it be?
So that would be to never lose sight of the possibility for you on the other side of any challenge that you might face.
And finally, and before we wrap up, where can people connect with you and keep up with your work?
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, so they can connect with me on my website, which is www.katelundspeaks.com. And they can also check out my new book and learn a bit about me on Amazon. The book is called Step Away: The Keys to Resilient Parenting.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles. That was Dr. Kate Lund, and I'll see you in the next one. And I just want to remind you, be fearless, be curious, and you're never alone. See you, everybody. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you.
Not a problem.